Hello and welcome to 50 by 40's Global Engagement Summit, Voices for a Better Food Future. I'm your host, Saroja Coelho. I'll be with you for the next 3 days. It's a real honor to have you joining us from all over the world. Over the next 3 days, we can look forward to a vibrant conversation on how to facilitate a just transition towards a fair, healthy, and compassionate food system, delivering nutritious and predominantly plant-based food for all. 50 by 40 has gathered voices from across the globe for this conversation to collectively examine the challenges ahead and to exchange ideas. That's the really important part here as we unite our efforts to address livestock production. Before we dive in, I'd like to share our code of conduct for the next 3 days. 50 by 40 is committed to creating a welcoming environment. It should be inclusive, respectful, safe for everyone in attendance. So we're asking you to help us ensure a harassment-free experience for everyone in attendance, regardless of gender identity and expression, age, sexual orientation, physical ability or appearance, body size and shape, race, ethnicity, religion or lack thereof, or technological choices. We have also established some guiding principles for the days ahead. Today, our guiding principles are listen and learn. This summit is intended as an immersive experience that inspires new thought and a dynamic exchange between people from around the world. There are participants joining us from 60 countries and many different sectors and living in a diversity of political and social contexts. So we have so much we can learn from each other. We invite you to bring your curiosity and your compassion as you meet new people and engage with new perspectives. Tomorrow and Thursday, we shift things a little bit. Our guiding principles become engage and unite. This is when you really take ownership of your summit experience, and we've set up what are called action tracks. So these are like small workshop settings that are designed to give you the space to share your ideas and your questions. And this gives everyone a chance to hear about your unique contribution to collective actionable outcomes. There are other ways to connect and participate during this 3-day summit. We have set up Slido. This is a polling platform where you can share your questions and take part in quizzes. I'm going to talk you through that in just a moment. If you are posting on social media, please include hashtag FoodEngage20 or 50 by 40 GES for Global Engagement Summit. We would really love to see the conversation that you are having online. There are some incredible people in attendance. We can't all be in a room together right now, but we can at least bridge that social distance. We have set up a conference app that you can use to network and connect with each other. And we also have some wonderful keynote speakers. You just got a little glimpse of them right there. In addition to all of these speakers, there will also be an opportunity for you to ask questions. We are going to be welcoming Hindou Oumarou Ibrahim as our keynote speaker and to open today's ceremonies. Hindou is an environmental activist from Chad's pastoralist Mbororo community. Among her many accomplishments, which would take me so long to describe, she has an incredible biography behind her. She also serves as a UN Sustainable Development Goals advocate. Over the course of today, we're also going to have the opportunity to hear from Dolores Huerta, who is one of the most influential labor activists of the 20th century, and she is a leader in the Chicano civil rights movement. Also joining us today is Ana Lape. She is a best-selling author. She's an advocate for food justice and sustainability, and her most recent book, Diet for a Hot Planet, The Climate Crisis at the End of Your Fork, will help frame some of the conversation today. In addition to these incredible global leaders, we have assembled experts from around the world for our panel discussions. Each panel will also offer an opportunity for you to ask questions through the Slido platform. So that's just a quick overview, but you can see some of the other things that will be happening. There are so many conversations. I hope it will be fascinating and challenging and inspiring. So let's try and flex our muscle a little bit and use the Slido tool. We're going to create a word cloud together. So what you can do is get on the tool and add what country you are joining us from today. I'm just going to give you a minute to do that. Go into the Slido app and tell us which country you are joining us from today. And we have strong representation from the United States and Germany today. So something that's really important to us going forward is that we get a chance to spread this work. Oh, wow. Yeah, huge, big Germany, United States, but we've also got folks from Estonia and Belgium, Trinidad, Tobago, I see. Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for participating. Sri Lanka, Ecuador, Vietnam. I'm from Brazil. It's really wonderful that if we can't be face to face, that we have this chance to interact. What's really important is that as the global engagement opportunity extends itself, that we are going to try and find ways to engage more people from other parts of the world outside of the major countries that we've seen represented here today. That was a really good test. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We hope that you will continue to participate over the next few days, and it sure feels good to feel that you're out there. Again, if you are posting tweets during the summit, you can post under hashtag Engage20, and we will see all your contributions to the conversation. I would now like to pass you over to 50 by 40's Executive Director, Lasse Brun, for some opening comments.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to 50 by 40's Global Engagement Summit here today. I'd like to start by taking you a few years back in time to a moment of incredible hope and jubilation in Paris in 2015. I stood in the plenary hall of the Paris Climate Change Conference as the Paris Agreement was officially adopted. This was the first time in history most major emitting countries committed to actually cut their emissions and strengthen their commitments over time. This was the world collectively saying, enough is enough, we have to do something about climate change. The Paris Agreement was a major victory, but an equally huge global challenge still needed to be properly addressed, which is how to feed the growing population in an equitable, sustainable, and humane way. To achieve this, there's so many aspects we need to address: food waste, land grabbing, food insecurity, equitable distribution, and not least, livestock production. The way we raise and consume animals is increasingly being recognized as one of the main challenges of the 21st century. Just last week, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres held his crucial State of Planet talk, and he emphasized that food systems are one of the main reasons we are failing to stay within our planet's ecological boundaries. The hard work leading to the Paris Agreement taught us that the key to global collaboration lies in ensuring that all voices are heard. The agreement would never have been a reality without science, civil society, business, and all other non-state actors working closely together. We need to take the same approach for food production and to ensure we create a healthy and fair food system that works with nature and not against it. A great opportunity lies in the UN Food Systems Summit at the end of 2021, next year, in a month from now. This has the potential to become the beginning of a Paris Agreement for food systems, if you will. And to achieve that, we need to break down all barriers between non-state actors and be ambitious and bold in our collaboration. It starts by having all those hard conversations across sectors, which can help guide the way forward. And it includes learning from leaders like Dolores Huerta, Hindou Oumarou Ibrahim, Anna Lape, and Genesis Butler, who we are honored to have with us for the summit. The next 3 days will see some of the brightest minds and innovative leaders come together to help build the food future we so desperately need. I'm beyond proud to have 50 by 40 host all these amazing discussions and look forward to starting this critical journey with you all. Thank you, and let's get started.
Thank you very much for that. That was Lasse Brun, who is the Executive Director of 50 by 40. You have yet another chance to interact on Slido. This time the question is, what is your vision for a better food system? What is your vision for a better food system? And you might be inspired in your answers as you hear our next keynote speaker. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Hindou Oumarou Ibrahim, who is an environmental activist from the Mbororo pastoralist community in Chad. Hindou is an expert in climate adaptation and mitigation strategies of Indigenous people and the value of traditional ecological knowledge. She is co-chair of the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change and the founder of the Association for Indigenous Women and Peoples of Chad. Hindou Oumarou Ibrahim, it's such a pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you so much, Saroja. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending from where you are. I hope you all doing well in your family too in this critical time. I think in this time we miss meeting each other physically, and it is also the same time how this discussion become a very, very important. So your work in 50 by 40, it's really very important to me, and it is the two bigger crises that we are facing in the planet. One of them is the climate change, of course, that all of us are know and experience some of his impact. And the second is the nature loss, the biodiversity loss. One of the major solutions that we have in common, it's the better food productions. So how all of us, we can turn and have a better production and better consumption of our food, because we know that food produce a big greenhouse gases. And when there is a big greenhouse gases, who are the most impacted are the indigenous communities, those who have them life, linked and dependent from the environment. And those are my peoples because I am coming from it. And we all know also that 2020 supposed to be a super year for the biodiversity, how the nature can play the role for all of us. And then suddenly by the COVID-19, everything changed in one time. So it's devastated in all our living in harmony with the nature. But we have all the moral urgent to tackle the global threats from the pandemic to the climate change and move to the more important how we can live in harmony with the nature. And no one can understand that better than my peoples, the Mbororo pastoralists, as you said in the presentations. So my communities are a nomadic peoples who are a cattle herders, but moving from one place to another one, who have them life completely different from what is happening in the Western life as industrialized agriculture. So in my community, at this key moment, even if the government do not respect the Paris agreements, if we all fell from how we can learn from the lesson of the COVID to support each other, but my peoples cannot survive. So that's why it is very important to see how we can all join the hand and build the solutions. And one of the solutions, it's around our food and food productions. You know, your work in 50 by 40, it's very critical to achieve the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goal, and especially the Sustainable Development Goal number 2, who is the zero hunger. How we can play to the end of hunger, how we can achieve the food insecurity. And as indigenous people, we talk about food sovereignty, because if we have food security, it will be always assisting peoples by giving them food, but they cannot be independent on producing and eating the food that they deserve to get. So how we can end this one? But yet, 5 years after all the commitment, we have the inclusion of the food insecurity. We have the form of malnutrition that increase around all the communities. But how we can tackle it and end it by the 2030, because we know the Sustainable Development Goals are from the now to the 2030. We have only the 10 years, of course, as the Paris agreements. So UN need the food the UN food agencies said 2019 and 2030, they have a hunger that increased around all the world. But let me tell you just this year, because in Chad, my country, when we face the climate impact, it's becoming from the extreme weather events. Last year, we get more than 40 to 50 degrees Celsius of the drought. And that create all the crops dried up, and it's create the food insecurity and people's fighting to get access to the piece of the fertile land just to get access on it. And this year exactly, it's becoming the opposite, because we are facing a big flood where all the crops that grow up flooding, and then it's ending up by leaving people become homeless. When you see the map of the world food World Food Programs that publishes the hunger around the world, Chad becoming a #1. We do not used to have this food insecurity around the regions, but we become #1. Why? For me, it's obvious. We used to have the normal rain season that become from 3 to 9 months. So 3, it's from the north, 9 months, it's from the south. But now the rain season become much and much shorter, from 3 to 6 months. And that changed the way of productions of our communities around farmings, around pastoralism, and around the fishing. And that's increased the food insecurity. And it is obvious for me because when we come over the COVID-19, so people's take the measures who are not adopt to the communities, especially to the indigenous communities who are living and depending from the nature. And that's mean for us when they close the border, so my people cannot transit over the frontiers. And if we do not follow the rain, who do not stop even there is COVID. So we are just stacking in one way, and it is impact the way of productions of our life. And it is the same with many other indigenous communities around the world who are living and depending from the nature for them daily food, who do not depend from the supermarket to go with the cash and buy a piece of the food, but who depend from the rainfall when they make the agriculture and then they get the food from there. So for us as indigenous peoples, nature is beyond just being a trees or a birds. Nature is our supermarket because it is giving us food. Nature, it's our water points because it's giving us all the fresh water we can drink and all the water we can use to grow up our agriculture. And nature is our pharmacy because from the plants that we are using, that we are having our medicine and we are building all our system to protect ourselves from all the sickness that we are experiencing in our life. So indigenous peoples around the world are more than 400 millions, maybe half of millions, we can say that. We are 5% of the world populations, but we protect 80% of the world biodiversity, who is really a lot. So from the forests to the savannas, mountains to the deserts, ice cap, indigenous peoples have them life depend from the nature, and they know how to protect it and how to leave the fertile land in order to get it the next time. I give you the examples from my community. You know, when you are in Europe, and I understand that completely, people wanted to live without eating the meat. It is normal. Why? Because the industrialized agriculture, it's the one who are the bigger emitter of emissions. In France, I know the data, it is like 20% of industrialized agriculture that making all the greenhouse gases. And they do not have any strategy to just keep it down because they need the food for them peoples. So in my community, it is the opposite sides. So our beef productions are zero emitters. We are a net zero already into the Paris agreements. Why? Because when we move from one place to another one with the cattle, so our cattle helping the soil to get regenerated in a natural way. That's why in my communities, we can move over 1,000 kilometers just during 1 year by living 2 days in one place, 3 days in another one, 2 days in one, 3 days in another. And that help us to build an harmony and a balance of our ecosystem to get it regenerated in a natural way. That's why when you found some study by IUCN or Conservation International or others, they say the nature-based solutions can build 30% of the solutions we wanted to have to reduce the emissions. But yet it is not the same what is happening in the industrialized countries. It is not the same that's happening in all the developed countries who's supposed to lead the way because they are developed, because they have the technology, but it is not the same. So it is time that they come and learn from us. they come and learn from the wisdom of indigenous peoples, come and learn from the indigenous people's way of living in harmony with the nature, learn from my communities, from my grandmother who know how to use her food from these years to use it for the next years, because if she predict the weather, she know that maybe the next year cannot be enough for her community to get a food. So she know how to dry it, how to keep it without electricity, without fridge, but she know how to use it and how to live in harmony with her nature. So maybe it is time now to live from this way of industrialized and learn from the indigenous peoples how we do the sustainability. Secondly, we need to move from the wasting the food. It is so incomprehensible for me when I see in developed world the quantity of the food that they are having in the supermarket, and then with the death of experiment that they cannot sell all. So why people need to produce more than what they need to eat? So there is need of reorganization of the system of production. And in this one also, there are a lot of things to learn from indigenous peoples. When we produce, we do not take a big quantity of the land to do just in agriculture. We do a variety of agroecology, and my brothers and sisters from the Amazon can tell you how they do the sustainable agricultures with the resources that they do have, and then they still have the most diverse ecosystem in the land. And that means they can eat whatever they want in an equitable way, and they can also protect and respect the nature. It is the same from my brothers and sisters from Pacific. They know exactly how they can fish, but how they can fish in a traditional way by respecting the quantity of the fish that they are having and the quality that they are having in order to maintain the balance in them oceans. And it is the same for my brothers and sisters, the Sami peoples in the Iceland, who are also a fisher peoples, but who are also a ranger holders. So they know the quantity of the ranger meat that they have to use and how much they have to keep as them cattle, because when you have the rangers, that can help you to understand what are the epidemiological sickness in the eyes, and then the rangers just to say by them mind to do not go in this place. So we do have a lot of wisdom from the indigenous people's knowledge that can help the world to understand the better productions of the food and to use the better consumptions. So they need to learn from those wisdom in order to change the way of productions. Thirdly, when there is a food waste, why do we want to produce over our needs? So in my community, I give you the examples. When you have a cattle, you do not eat the meat every day because you have the cattle. It do not work like that at all. Why? Because we know that how the cattle can respect the land and how we can respect them. People use the subsidy just to exchange with other product, or they can use them just to live for the other animals to feed themselves. And when I see in the industrialized countries that they use in wasting because they are torture the animals themselves, it is in the behavior of like how they can know that those animals have also a life, they exist, they are a piece in our nature. We need them to keep the balance. So there is no need to over exploit them because just of human needs. So we need to understand as human beings, we are only one species of the nature. We are not beyond the tree or beyond the birds or beyond the cattle or beyond whatever other species. We are only one species, but we are the most worst to our nature. How we can understand that and how we can respect the rest of the species in order to share the food that we do have. I wanted to give you the examples of how climate change is damaging in my communities. Over just my age, when I get born, around 1980, the bigger lake of the fresh water around my regions, who used to be more than 10,000 kilometers squares of fresh water. Actually now, we have less than 2,000 square water. And in these lake areas, 90% only disappear. And imagine the quantity of the ecosystem that are disappearing with this quantity of the water that already shrinking, already evaporated. And suddenly they have more than 40 million people living around this Lake Chad area and depending from his fragile ecosystem for them daily food. So that's why for us, when the resources shrink, so it's creating conflict among communities to fight each other to get access to these resources. And when we see in the developed countries, they have a more and the West this food, there is not respect for our nature at all. So there is a need of solidarity, of understanding what is happening in the other hand and how they can use the solutions that we do have in our place to implement them in them place. So thinking in solidarity each other to do not waste the food here and to protect the resources in the other hand, that can help us to sustain the life. And that's what I love more about 50 by 40 plan. So, for us, we already over 40 and 50 degrees Celsius. And it is around all the Sahel regions. And all the rhythm of the season that change, who impact us. From the flood to the drought, from the shrinking to all our natural resources, make us more vulnerable and make us more poor. And that's also why when we see the other world do not respect the nature, we have to stand up and fight. That can resume what I am doing in my life and why I am doing it. So I am doing my activism because my peoples can just simply disappear if the other peoples do not change their behavior on consumptions, on productions, on the way of living in harmony with the nature. I don't want to see my peoples to disappear just because another human being do not take his responsibility. And that's the second reason of my fight, because I wanted to bring a solutions, how we can all build the solutions together. So we must integrate the science knowledge and indigenous people's traditional knowledge together in order to build these solutions. And that is what I am doing. And we can do it to protect the nature and to sustainable while we are creating a healthy diet for all the peoples and fighting the hunger to achieve the objective 2 of the SDGs and the objective 1 beyond the poverty. So we must transform our food system to reduce the cost of nutrition, food, and increase the affordability of our healthy diet. We need to do that in an urgent manner because this requires an intervention along the entire food supply chain. And why we wanted to have it, we do have a food summit who is going to be organized next year. But what are we expecting from it? Like a community like mine, who is living already in a hunger and who is living already in a food insecurity. We expect how they can use our traditional knowledge to put it as solutions to fasting, the climate change action. We know nearly the 90% of indigenous peoples lack of school, hospitals, of electricities, but they do not lacking the traditional knowledge. We do have those traditional knowledge and come to our land. You can see and learn how we are doing it better. We know nearly to all indigenous peoples are living in those different ecosystems. They know how to cope with a various ecosystem, how we can learn living in each different ecosystem in harmony. I wanted to give you another examples of how we are living in harmony with our seasons. maybe Western knowledge say in the Sahel, we have 3 seasons: rain season, dry season, and cold season. And maybe in the Western way, they have 4 seasons. But in my communities and in many other indigenous communities, we have ecosystemic based season because it is integrating our food system also. So our ecosystem-based season around the Lake Chad, where I told you previously, who is shrinking on 90%, we have 6 seasons. So those seasons help us to see if one of them do not come in the right time, that means we are going to face a food insecurity. And we have to prepare ourselves in order to better plan our next season. In the south, when you go a little bit too deep to the tropical forest, we have 7 seasons. And as long as one of the seasons do not come in the right way, we know that what we can plan for the next upcoming season. So how the other Western knowledge and the science knowledge, that learning from how we define our season, that can help us just by observation from the wind direction, from the cloud positions, from the birds migrations, and it's help us to say if we are going to plant our crops or not. So we need those traditional knowledge with the science knowledge in order to help us to better build the solutions. And that is why I wanted to share with you, I did one of the examples of how we can better manage our ecosystem. It is called a 3D participatory mapping. Maybe some of you hear me about the 3D participatory mapping. Why I love talking about it? Because it is so aspirational solutions based on traditional knowledge and science knowledge. So when you wanted to build it, firstly, you have to gather the geographical informations, come from the baseline. And second, you need to run a process with the communities, the elders, the youngest, women, man, all together. And then you build the map with the children who can come also and learn. And at the end, the man come, when they build the map, they put the bigger repair of the knowledge. And that means the water points, the forests, the mountains, and villages, all the bigger repairs. And at the end, we call the women to come put them repair. They say this place is not right because this is the place when I collect my food during the dry season. They say this place, it is where I collect the water during the rain season. So they start putting the knowledge, and it's open the discussions among the communities. And it's helped the communities to better learn about how they can manage the ecosystem, how they can live in harmony, how they can put a plan for the adaptation, how they can build a resilience of the communities. So without going to the schools, when we do the 3D participatory mapping, who can put the science knowledge and traditional knowledge, communities are empowered, and then they can express for themselves, from them knowledge, how they can build their own resilience. So if we use those kind of solutions, we all know we can better have a best production and consumptions of the food that we are producing from all the places. So in all this, we have an opportunity. We have the opportunity to collaborate with the world. And that's why we need to engage a SDG 17, the partnership, how we all can partner together, governments to change the policies, to have a new system of governance of the nature, because this system we is still using, it's not work. If it's work, we are going to be carbon neutral. Because it is not work, we are increasing the carbon. So this system of governance need to change, and they cannot change if the peoples are not up. So we need everyone and each hold the government accountable, remind them the responsibility. They maybe think only about the vote. We need to vote for the right person. We need to vote for the person that respect our way of living, who can respect the nature, who can help us to build a better future. So then they need to rebuild up a new solution, new system for the governance. Secondly, we need to see what the private sectors can do as role. Private sectors are the one who are damaging the nature, but they are the one also who have the solutions by technology. So they can scale up the collaboration between farmers, pastoralists, fishermen, and them own companies. How they can learn from our knowledge, how they can better respect the rights of indigenous peoples. Because when we talk about food, we are talking about land right, we are talking about water access, we are talking about development, we are talking about our own human right to access to the equitable and right food or diet for all of us. So private sectors have the role also to play, but they have the huge responsibility to respect the rights and to do the human rights based approach. All the world is running out of the time. We all know that we have 10 years, maybe less. I can tell you maybe less. I am very worried about how my communities can be survived after the 10 years. Can they survive up to 55 degrees Celsius? I don't think so. It is not possible at all. Can they produce the food in this land? I don't think so. So I don't want to leave them like that. I wanted to build a solutions for my peoples. So my peoples and indigenous peoples everywhere can help to show the way. Let us work together. Let us learn from our wisdom. Let's learn from the traditional knowledge. Let us put our effort together. Let's partnership. We are all ready to partner with everyone and each of you to help transform the agriculture in the world, to support the families' agriculture, and to support the smallholders that are putting the food in our tables. We all are equal because we depend from three things. Food that we are eating, we need it every day. Clean air we breathe, we need it every day. And water we drink, we need it every day. So we have the solutions in our hand. Let us build it together and let us do the sustainable world we want for us now and for the future generation. I'm so excited to be with you. Maybe I went over my time, but I'm very happy to give you this note, and I will be very happy to follow the 2 days of the excited event and hear the concrete solution that can help my peoples. And I am ready also to help all of you. Thank you so much, Soraja.
Hindou, thank you so much. What a wonderful, wonderful speech. I don't think any of us mind you taking extra moments. There was so much to learn in your conversation with us today. I want to turn very quickly to our participants and say thank you for all the fantastic questions that you're uploading to our Slido tool. Please keep them coming. I'm going to read some of the questions that you have for Hindou in just a moment. There's also a poll there where you can talk about some of your vision for a future, a better food future and a better food system. Hindou, cover the relationship that we have with the natural world and take us all the way into repercussions for the future if we don't learn to collaborate with each other. So one thing I'd like to ask you about quite specifically is how livestock production has affected food security in your community in Chad.
Right. So, we used like just 10 years ago, personally, with my grandmother, we used to milk during the dry season 2 times a day. So we milk morning, very early, of course, at 5, and we milk evening. But actually now, just to imagine 10 years, we cannot milk during the dry season just like 1 time a day. We milk once every 2 days. Why? Because the first day we milk for ourselves. The second days we have to leave the milk for the baby cows because there is not enough milk at all. And the reason is because the resources shrink and we do not have enough water and enough pastures. And then we see that the behavior of our animals change completely. So when we work, we continuously, luckily doing our transhumance as pastoralists. So it's helped the ecosystem to get regenerate, but it do not give us enough milk for our daily need. And that is also why the food insecurity, it's become increasing in all the Sahel region.
And how are you seeing that connection with industrialized livestock production? The jump there between your experience and the incredible loss of water and that impact on your community is very clear, and what's happening in daily practice. But how is that connected specifically with livestock production, in
Absolutely.
industrialized livestock production?
Absolutely. You know, the industrialized livestock productions over all the developed countries are multiplied very, very fast. When we are experiencing the natural and then the best to milk that respect the nature, they destroy the nature. And when they destroy the nature, you know, they use the milk, they put it in the powder. They put them as a milk powder. They send them to our communities to sell in order to make again money. It's really make me so mad because I found that so unjust, because not they do not only respect the nature, they do not respect the peoples, they do not respect the diet at all. They continuously doing the multiplications of the cattle in a very industrialized way that we do not need. They produce the greenhouse gases, they make overproductions of the meat that we do not need, who create all the sickness of the peoples in developed countries, from diabetes to all the obesity, etc. And they use the over milk to turn it into the powder and to take it back to our communities to sell. So it is really doubly and triply impact in our way of productions. That's why I'm always fighting this industrialized agriculture. I will never forgive them because they destroy our life. They are destroying our living in harmony with the nature. And they are just thinking about how they can make money every single day again and again. It's have to stop. We cannot continue like that. That cannot continue anymore. If we all decide to boycott what they're doing, maybe we can win at least half of it.
You have really painted a complicated picture for us. Because on the one hand, what you're speaking about is an incredible anger and a wish to boycott, which is the end of a conversation and the beginning of a different kind of expression of dissent. But at the same time, in your speech, you were speaking about how it's important to work with the private sector and that you're noticing a new conversation with Indigenous peoples around the world. Can you tell me about some of that collaborative conversation?
Right. So, you know, we are coming in the world that all of us are impacted from the climate change. So today, maybe all indigenous communities are the front lines. We are the most impacted because our life depends from this nature directly. You know, in my communities, there is no supermarket. So you cannot just like get your cash and go to the supermarket, buy the food. It's not working like that. You collect all your food during the rain season and you get one market every week. And in this market, you cannot get everything that you want. Maybe you can get salt or onion, so you cannot get the things that you want. So that's helped us to just live with the nature that we have. They collect everything from the nature. That's why I say, like, from my grandmother to all our generations, we collect the vegetables during the dry season and we keep them during the rain season. But from the private sectors, they just growing up always without respecting nature. But some of them committed to respect the nature. They committed to change the way of productions because they know there is no sustainable business without sustainable environment and without peoples that are buying. And they are also a group of the civil society who are making the pressure and in the consumers to say, do not buy the product that you do not know where it's coming from. So all these pressures to the private sector make them understand they have to collaborate. And that's why, while we are all impacted, we are all in the same boat. Why not we cannot collaborate? Because from our communities, we have the traditional knowledge we developed for centuries. From them side, they need the business, but they have the technology. So how we can collaborate, how they can support our way of production in order to have a right food for everybody. The organic food for everybody. Everyone deserve it. Now, when I see in the Europe, I'm very shocked because if you are rich, you can buy a organic food. You can select it. But if you are poor, you have no choice. You have just to buy every food who is cheap for you to eat. So it is creating injustice. So that's why we need to work all together in partnership and create this organic food to all the peoples as a right best approach for the food.
Hindou, I want to turn to, thank you very much for that excellent answer and for everything you're encouraging us to think about today. I want to turn to some of our participants who have been sending in questions. Thank you everyone for the questions you've been sending to Slido. It is still open, and there's also a poll there for your vision of a better food system. We have a question for Hindou from Julia, who says, thank you. It's such a wonderful speech. I completely agree. She would like to know, how do we integrate scientific and indigenous knowledge?
Right. Thank you, Julia, for your questions. So science knowledge, always the best on the evidence. They wanted to see 1 + 1, it's 2. So traditional knowledge are best in observations. I give you the example of how I did in my community to make the scientific interest to come in my communities and start integrating the traditional knowledge. So, you know, the meteorological system, they have a lot of data that they are managing. Then in my communities, we have our meteorological observations just from the nature. And I decided to take 5 of the experts who are from agrometeorology to the climatolog or whatever, all these technical names. I took them for the first time to come in my nomadic communities. And then they are happy to go just in the forest outside. That's the things for them. But for me, I wanted to make a revelation for them. So when we arrive in the communities, just as we are nomadic, we do not have houses. We have just like a hood that we can pack every 3 days. And then communities start packing the things, all the staff who are surrounding us. And then the meteorologists, they say like, are we moving? I'm like, no, we are not moving. It's going to rain. And then they just look at the sky. It's like, oh no, there are no clouds. It's not going to rain. They have them tent, but they didn't build the tent, whatever. They are just sitting there. We say like, okay. So all my communities build all the, we pack all the stuff. Suddenly, heavy rain start coming. And then you see all the big director and scientific and PhD person, like they start running and hiding under the trees. And you have kids at the community just like laughing on them because they see people in the town coming with nice dressing, whatever, and then running under the rain to hide. But at the end of the rain, so they say like, how do you know it's going to rain? We're like, well, just so like the woman saw the little ant are taking them eggs inside the nets. That means from now to the next 2 hours maximum, it's going to be raining. Because while the nets do not have the applications to check if it's going to rain or if it's going to be hot, they know that by them inside just behaviors. They know that they have to save them eggs because those are them generations. And when we see that, and we have to observe the wind direction, we have to observe the cloud position, the bird. So you observe every time in natural way. And that's how we know. And then they say like, okay, so as meteorological scientists, we work on the wind also, and cloud maybe, but we do not observe the biological informations. So maybe you need to tell us how you do that. So from that time, I organized a workshop. And when I brought a community's leaders there with the scientists, and then the scientists start explaining how they're doing them observation, the daily observation, the weekly observation, and monthly. And my community start doing daily, weekly, 3 months, and 1 year observation. They're like, what? We say like, yes, we can tell you if next year is going to be a good rainy season or not. And you can only tell us maybe maximum 3 months, not more. So that's how our knowledge are deep. And then they start just like exchanging and working with us. And it is end up not only the collaboration between scientists and my communities and indigenous people's knowledge, but the politicians come there, they say like, okay, so we need to integrate the traditional knowledge in the planning of the adaptations. And that is how I am working with now many African governments to integrate traditional knowledge in a national adaptation plan.
You've given us so many examples for how we can engage a variety of voices, particularly examples from your own community, but you are also working closely with Indigenous leaders around the world. What are you hearing from them about the impact of industrialized livestock on food security in the communities that they live in?
I think from all the rest of the indigenous peoples around the world, I have a lot of brothers and sisters in, I mean, if I say brothers and sisters, indigenous brothers and sisters, because we call ourselves as families around the Amazon, around the Indonesia, around the Pacific, in Arctic. So all of them having the same experience of fighting. Most of them do not want to anymore talk with the private sector because they know that industrialized agriculture grab them land. You know how many environmental rights defenders are killed every year? We have thousands that kill it already because they wanted to fight to just to keep them land. So they are all fighting over the land grabbing because the big industrialized agriculture, they grab the indigenous land and then they implement a big agriculture who are not helpful for the communities. I get the chance to visit Indonesia. So I went to Kalimantan. I visited 2 industrialized paper companies. When I went there, I stayed 3 days with them to monitor and to see what they are doing. They say they are working with the local peoples to help them. They organize them as cooperative. But when you see the way that they are organized them, they use them as workers. So you have like one individuals who in charge of 1 hectare of palm oil tree. That's why I really hate the palm oil, because it's really not only destroying the environment, but it is also making the right violation of the peoples. So one human being just to have to cut an hectare of the palm oil. I saw that with my eyes, not just like someone taught me. And I discussed with those peoples. And then they put it in the cooperative. And then when they get the final product, they collect all this as industry and go and sell it. So those communities do not have enough land to do their own family agriculture. At the end of the day, they have to buy the food, who become much expensive because the company implement all what they need in them land by grabbing them land, by transforming them as worker. They cannot go to school. They cannot do whatever things. They have just to be dedicated 100% working on it. If they don't want to do it, they are fired. If they fire, they do not have land. They do not have resources, and they just like end it up with nothing. So they found themselves like in a prisoned by the companies who are doing the not sustainable agriculture, grabbing the land and using them as worker. And then they are also prisoned by the government, because government say, okay, we relocate you, we give you the chance to work, and if you don't want to work, you're done. So I saw that with my eyes, not someone told me. And when I went out, I'm like, do you think you are just helping the communities? You are working with them? No, you are just making money. And it is not normal. It is not fair. It is a peatland. You need to respect the peoples who know better manage the peatland. But you cannot use it for the palm oil tree and call it on the name of the food commodity. It is not a food commodity at all when we compare it. So this is in Indonesia. It is the same in Arctic with the fishing. So with the salmon fishing, it is the way of traditional way of fishing for Sami people. But now it's becoming so industrialized that the traditional way of fishing become very marginalized. And for them, they are not fishing to sell. They are fishing for their own food. That's why they know which kind of fish that they have to catch, which season they have to go, and which season they have to keep it dry. So it is the same around all the indigenous peoples. That's why at the international level, we have a movement to fight against all the industrialized agricultures and to show them that we have the better system to feed the world in an organic way and by respecting our nature to fertile.
What you're talking about is a profound shift in values, and that is some of the discussion that we're going to be having over the next few days, where there are opportunities for sharing knowledge and where there are opportunities for really shifting how we relate to nature and to each other. You've covered so much territory. It's been such a fulfilling conversation. I want to ask you one last question. This one comes from Heather Graham. Hannah Graham, thank you very much for this question. Hannah is asking what your vision is for a multisectoral food system with partners, so comprised of business, government, producers. You've spoken to some of that as you talked about scientists. How do you envision them all working together towards a common goal?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. I can see them work together because we have the Sustainable Development Goals that adopted by all the world to achieve it together. So the Sustainable Development Goal number 17, it's partnership. So I can see them partners, all of them, but partnership is not meaning like they have beneficiaries who will be the communities, and they have experts who will be the scientists, and they have decision makers who are the government. It cannot work like that because this is the system we have now. The decision making decide for everything they want. And then the scientific or private sector call themselves, they have expert, and then the expert design the model. And then they come to the community, say like, okay, we decide, we come with the model, we implement to you. This is not a partnership. What I call partnership, it's how all those people sit together and design the model together. And that's why I give the example of the 3D participatory mapping, because not the thing the community didn't went to school that they do not deserve to decide. They are wrong. The communities are the engineer of them land. They are expert of them territories. They know better them land than any other expert who can got a PhD of the land. You can go to the school, study it, design it, writing it in English, in Arabic, in French, whatever. But when you go to the ground, the reality is different. And especially now with the climate change impact, the reality change every day. If you do not live in the land every day, you do not see this reality. So that's why it is very important to be partners with the equal right. So how they can sit down in the same tables, how they can take the decisions together. And that is why I'm attending the international negotiation. I do not allow the government to just decide in the side of the indigenous peoples without that indigenous people say something. We say, I did that during the, after the Paris Agreement in the COP22, when they wanted to implement the local communities and indigenous peoples platform on the knowledge exchange. I say, well, the climate change negotiations is a process held by the government. It is only the government who have the right to sit down and negotiate. All the rest of us, we are called observer. So I say it is not possible. You cannot talk about us without us. You wanted to talk about our knowledge, we have to sit in the tables with you. We have to talk in this document with you. We have to tell you, you cannot put it, or you put it. You have to decide in the same level. So at the beginning, they say like, oh, it is not the rules and procedures. We're like, okay, if it is not the rules and procedures, I was the co-chairs of the International Indigenous People Forum on Climate Change. It is not the rule of procedures. Okay, go stay alone and talk among yourself. You do not have our knowledge. You do not know our knowledge, so you cannot talk. And then all the countries consult, and then they decide, they say like, okay, they leave us sit in the tables, they leave us talk. So for the first time in the history of the UNFCCC, the climate change, first time after 21 years of negotiations, we sit in the tables and we negotiate our own decisions. And when we sit in the tables, we ask them the equal seat. And that is why now in the facilitative working group, we have 7 representatives from the government, and we have 7 from indigenous peoples. I am one of them who among the 7 representatives. So if next year they have 8 representatives, we are going to request to have 8 representatives. So this is the way I'm asking. We sit in the tables together. We are a partners, and we decide all together, and we build the better future. So this is especially what is needed now. We can do it, but we have to force them doing it. We are also the expert of our place, and we are expert of our food, because we are the one who are eating all the food. If they produce it and it is not sustainable, they put it in the market, and you are the one who own your money. You can decide to buy from another person. So this is how we can make it equal decisions among the three parties.
Thank you so much, Hindou. You've given us so much to think about, and thank you for that wonderful resume of the entire thing. The partnerships really is the core here, and beneath that, a depth of respect for nature and for each other. It has been such a privilege to have you. I'd like to share something with you. We've been having a live sketch artist participate with us today, and we're going to share on the screen our live sketch. If that can be popped up, just give us a second. We have sketch artist Mike Brennan has been with us and is going to share his real-time sketch. There you go.
Oh, wow.
This is you speaking with us today.
Oh, wow. Oh my God, this is so wonderful.
It is wonderful.
Great artist. Thank you so much. Please use your talent to change our world. You already changed my heart. I love that. Thank you so much, Saraja. Thank you.
Oh, you're so very, very welcome. Thank you for everything you've encouraged us to think about today.